Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out at the end of the day here. We have a great set of information that's come through the set of speaker candidates that we've heard through the day. My name is Brian Fogg. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the Federal Civilian Division of General Dynamics Information Technology. I'll try to shorten that up to GDIT, FedCivDiv, if we need to come back to that later, because that's quite the mouthful. I'm joined on the panel today by Jeff Schilling from the National Cancer Institute and Rick Jack from Navy SSC PAC. I'm pleased to talk through some examples of where this cloud journey that we've heard about. We had a great set of speaker coming through the start of the activities today, talking about what's happening in this market. I like to follow the idea of a myth-busting capability, and I'm not sure where the next slide. Thank you. As part of this myth-busting journey, I actually picked this up from my son. Here's a great opportunity for coming in and asking questions and pushing through this show, Mythbusters, where they pose a question and they talk through the examples and they use math and science to try to prove this out. I couldn't bring things today to drive thank you very much, drive some of these examples, but I brought something better. I've got two folks that have gone through and implemented and driven this kind of capability set through their customers. And it's a really exciting time to see how they have pulled together and pushed through some of these challenges that we see in trying to bring workloads to the cloud. As part of this journey, I reflected back, say, 25 years ago, and I was thinking about a couple of things that I was working on back then, distributed computing environment, or DCE. And I was implementing these high transaction rate systems leveraging Transarc. It was a DCE-oriented Encina transaction processing monitor. And as I looked to implement these at scale, this was a really hard problem to work through. There was a lot of engineering. There's a lot of capability sets that were just really hard to do. It was great to see the mission delivery, but it was difficult to get there. And what I really like to see now, as I fast forward today, is that we are building these high transaction rate systems. We're delivering them at scale, and we're delivering them in heterogeneous environments and being consumed in a much more rapid fashion than we've ever been able to do before. And this is part of, I think, the power, the acceleration that we're seeing in moving into this federal cloud journey. As part of this environment, General Dynamics itself, we have 40,000 EC2 workloads that we've migrated in for customers. We have 1,000 applications we've migrated onto this platform, and being able to move this through across 350 professionals that are driving these kinds of solutions today. And it's exciting to see these kind of capability sets and the experiences that we've drawn from them. And as I reflect on those, I wanted to spend just a minute or two on some of these cloud trends that we're seeing to really set up what's happening at National Cancer and the Navy SSC PAC. The first one, modernizing these government technology through now legislation is a nice driver to push this forward, but we're also seeing that the market-leading CSPs that are out are enabling these ecosystems. And there's a great opportunity in some of these ecosystems to really be enriched by a set of partner programs that are out there. And you've seen this in the hall as you've been walking through the open marketplace today. From a GDIT perspective, what we've always tried to do is take these sets of vendors and then rate them into a strategic category around key, so we evolve, and then emerging technology. Because we want to be able to deliver these kind of solutions at scale, and we want to have partner ecosystems that support it, but we never want to lose the fact that there's new and enhanced capabilities coming at a very rapid pace. So we host these emerging tech days to identify these companies to get them in front of customers, not in a sales mode, but as a way to make sure that we are delivering sets of capabilities where they want to be. We just had the CAPS bring home the cup, and it was a great time. And one of the nice things we can learn from this event from the Capitals, not so much that you have to really celebrate long and hard after a long win, but really what you can do is skate to where the puck's going. And this is what I like about this ability to have this emerging ecosystem of capabilities, these sets of broad vendors that you see up there, and reinforced by the ones that you can see out on the floor today. The second one that's up there that talks to this mission-centric cloud-based solution set. And this is a great opportunity where you're going to hear from Jeff to talk through the things that they've done to deliver these mission-capable systems. And what was interesting is that they were able to shift parts of the workload out of O&M into really the delivery of new capabilities on scientific exploration. So we can see not just a shift to lower cost, but maybe to shift that energy into other parts that are adding value to the mission. And that's a pretty exciting place to be. From the third, we look at these hybrid IT environments as to what's happening and where they're pushing forward. And there's an interesting opportunity to deliver solutions that support both internal cloud. So think of what the intelligence community is doing is they're pushing their own Amazon-based infrastructure, as well as the government cloud, as we go through FedRAMP kinds of solutions to get those workloads in place all the way out to commercial public cloud. And really what's across there is this slider, and they're pinned, if you look carefully, that security and cost, not a hard pin, but there's an alignment of those two. So as you slide left and right, the real driver from our perspective is to make sure you're putting the right workload into the right cloud environments based on those mission needs you're trying to support. And cost may be a driver, security may be a driver, but you have the freedom and flexibility that you're not driving one size fits all as part of this framework. And you're going to hear a little bit more about this later when the rest of the panel talks through the pieces that they're looking at. The fourth trend that I see out there in this marketplace is being to make sure that the environment can effectively leverage and plan this implementing cloud services and solutions. This is where we're trying to bring new capability sets in and drive forward with a discussion that really centers on where those mission capabilities go, and couple that with a nice security framework around it. And what you'll hear later from the Navy folks is how we actually push through and make sure that an enterprise architecture model can be put in place to drive that forward in a holistic way so that we are delivering a repeatable set of secure solutions on top of this environment. And one of the ways we try to have folks take a look at this is to set up a plan that allows you to progressively engage, build workload experience in a progressive model. So on the left, you'll see that there's a sliding shift between a 90% ratio, 10% between these easy and hard challenges, and then push the later ones further to the right. And sequence these out so that you learn as you're going forward. We want to make sure that as the desire to move to cloud happens, that architectural issues don't slow down the process. Really want to make sure that new capabilities get instantiated as quickly as you can, you learn from them, you improve them, and then you rinse and repeat to make sure you get this virtuous cycle, because the cloud allows that kind of flexibility to happen, and we can take advantage of that as we push forward. I'd like to introduce Jeff Schilling to talk through his view on where this is going. He's going to talk through big things, have small beginnings, and talk about the journey that the National Cancer Institute has undertaken here and a set of lessons learned and capabilities, and that'll be followed by Rick Jack, and he'll do the same thing on his journey through. Very interesting sets of topics. They'll align to the set of things that hopefully set this up, and then we'll have some myth busting that happens at the end. We'll pose 3 questions, and then we'll see where we are there. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Brian. There we go. So I work at the National Cancer Institute, which is part of the National Institute of Health, which is in Department of Health and Human Services. And we really have 3 main kind of functional areas inside the NIH. We have all the science work that's done, and that's both a clinical and kind of a basic science. We then have the funding of that science. So there's a lot of scientists, but they're working on teaming up with the academic world and the cancer research world to fund them. And then we have a administrative side, just like everyone has, the HR pieces, the funding pieces. And so it's in that really, those 3 pieces that we have to support. And I, as the acting CIO and then also running the IT, that's what we do. So as I was invited this by GDIT, invited to potentially do this, I'd like to convey some of the ideas that I'll either talk to my staff about or I'll talk to our customers about exactly what we're trying to do. And I was thinking what would be a good intro. So I had just recently seen this little thing, and it was on Lawrence of Arabia, and it was the ambassador was trying to convince this general that they needed to have this little person, Lawrence, go to the desert and fight the war there. And the general, I thought, well, that guy represents all the existing IT. And he's just like, that guy will have no impact on what we do. He will have no say, it'll make no change. And the ambassador just responds, well, big things have small beginnings. And to me, that's exactly what this transformation we're in. We know if you've seen the movie, Lawrence goes there and he converts that whole population to win and fight and win the war. And that's what the cloud is mainly. We think about it as technology, but it's really a transformation in how we do work, right? It's a change from we focus on the IT to now, well, we don't really have to focus so much on the IT. There's a vendor who's providing world-class IT for us. What we're focusing on is the business improvement that now this IT can deliver. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about our journey trying to do that, because of course we're really experts at doing things the old way. We have a great IT shop, we have a great IT infrastructure, and being able to move to the cloud is something we weren't necessarily really experts in at all. So we don't just have an IT focus though, we also have a big informatics focus. And so we have several different things that are going on, and I just wanted to make sure in this slide deck they're represented. So the first thing is that we're really looking at this cancer data ecosystem, which is we have these large data sets, we're putting them out in the cloud, and then we're allowing researchers to go out in the cloud, and these are kind of external researchers we fund to go out in the cloud and compute there. Otherwise, they're moving these multi-petabyte data sets around, very inefficient. We also, mostly what I'm going to focus on today is the second bullet, where we created a FSMA low and moving to FSMA moderate, AWS LAN GSS workable solution in AWS. We also are really focusing on our, we're fairly distributed IT place, so we're working with our divisions to get them to understand why they want to go to the cloud, what the cloud is exactly, and then we're also doing, trying to develop a lot more, we call these things pipelines in the science side, but it's really just analysis. So we have data, we go through a pipeline or analysis pipeline, and then we get the result in the end. And so that's how we kind of go from raw data to some kind of, well, less raw data, but also some knowledge extracted in the end. So most of this is around our IT piece. I thought that would be most important for today, but so really what we really focus on two main goals, and that's really we want to deliver IT faster, and we want to do that through automation. So there's a lot of tools available to you out there, a lot. And so you can be kind of tranced into saying, oh, look at all these solutions, but you really want to focus on how do we automate, how do we make this part simpler. And then our second main goal is that we want to have staff working with the customers, working on our mission. Our mission is to better understand cancer so we can either cure it better or alleviate the suffering due to that. So it's not about providing servers to users, right? It's about getting them so they can do work on the IT that we're providing. So the more we can move our staff away from providing compute to helping the users directly use that compute is a win for us. So really what we did is, in the very beginning, we just looked at the cloud and said, okay, is this really viable for us? Do we have an understanding of it? Is it mature enough? Of course, the answer is yes. And then we looked at different cloud service providers, and we chose Amazon as a first vendor to work with on the infrastructure side. So there's a scientific chemistry thing that I like to use. It's activation energy. So in order to go from one state to another, you have to add energy to that. And we felt that Amazon was going to require the least amount of energy to be able to go from one state to another. It wasn't just that it was more mature, but it was also that it kind of was very understandable to us. It wasn't so either abstract or foreign or different. So we chose that, and we've been very happy. That's why I say it aligned with our vision. Then we also really, I kind of have this next step out of order here, but we put this team together. So that's a big part of what I wanted to convey to you all, is that you really, really need to focus on the staff that are doing this. So I've been using the saying lately where I say, if you're looking for an expert, everything an expert knows is old. So if you're taking your expert staff and you're asking them to do something new, they're going to be reluctant to do that because they're all of a sudden not experts anymore. And you have to communicate to them and give them that confidence, give them the structure that they can fail or try things or do it in a certain way where they're able to regain that confidence they have, so they won't fall back and say, oh, this is an important system. We have to run this on-prem, because they have that confidence of running it on-prem. Instead, you have to get them so they have that confidence that it's going to be a much better solution in the cloud, so they have that skill set. That is not an easy thing to do. The cloud is moving so quickly. How do you get them trained? How do you get them certified? It's a big part of I think the successful picture. Then we also, after we put that team together, everything started to click in place. Of course, because they're excellent engineers. And then our virtual private cloud, the compute. We also then have to work, like all of you have to work inside of a structure. So we're an institute inside the National Institutes of Health. So we don't control our internet connections. So we have to work through that group to say we want direct connections. This is the speed we want. It's still they don't have the reference architectures or the vision that we have. So we try to provide that to them. And that's, again, you got to start those engagements early, because it takes a while for people to get their budgets or their staff in line with that. And then another big thing for us was that we were built around funding, buying a compute, and then using it fully. So all of a sudden, we're going to go to a status where we don't pay anything for compute, we only pay for usage. We really weren't built for that. We don't even know what that means still. So we knew right away it meant that, hey, we have to go to VMs, or we have to go to containers away from VMs. But how do we do that exactly? How do we optimize that? How do we get people used to turning their systems off, or the systems automatically being off? Again, we have to start training the users and the experts in that.
And I suppose pricing models and acquisition models of doing that in a reserved instance way versus regular also played into that learning curve.
I would say they're very behind. Acquisitions is very behind in this model, right? They're used to, you tell me what you want, you tell me how much it's going to cost, and we procure it for you. And then you say, well, I don't know how much it's going to cost. I don't know how much we're going to use. Right. That's not a warm and fuzzy for them. And so we're working on a lot of different ways to try to get past those hurdles. So currently we do have this FSMA low. We're moving it to FSMA moderate. It's for these hybrid workloads. We have containers. We're setting up the DMZ. One of the things I've tried to convey to people, I say, don't think about it as a cloud. Just think of it as this data center that Amazon runs for us. It's just a data center. We're just putting workload out there. It's connected the same. It's not available to anybody unless we do the same thing, put it through the DMZ, and do all the same extra security controls. And I think that kind of lowers their stress level a little bit.
And could you share a little bit about the journey to getting that ATO? So oftentimes that can be viewed as very cumbersome. So if you can do some upfront planning, maybe collect some documents, maybe do some of that work, when you actually push the start button to actually begin the development of the documentation packages and then get through the ATO, have you been able to see any accelerations there by careful planning to get you to that done state?
So I can tell you directly, we worked for 1 year to get this into production. So that's all with all the FedRAMP work Amazon has done. On top of that, it took us a year to figure out all the requirements we have to do with logging and monitoring and all that. And then, so since we had security involved in the very beginning, When we actually started the ATO process, it took us about 8 weeks. In the end, we had 0 POAMs. So it was a huge success in terms of just getting security involved early, because we know security is a retrospective thing. They take your solution and then they look at it, and that's not really a great way to move forward, right? You want them, and for us, we have GDIT as our security provider too, so maybe that's not the right thing to say, but I have one throat to choke in this, right? So I just go to Rob and I'm like, it's your team, Rob. Why isn't this working the way you promised it would work for me? And then, of course, he conveys to his team the importance of working together and being, we're here for this great mission. Let's not get confused with why we're here. And working together is a big part of that solution. So no POAMs, that's amazing, right? It makes the security team a lot more confident, too, in the quality of the work that we can deliver, and also the product that we're building it on. Amazon is so successfully and so secure in their change management and everything they provide. So I think this is my last slide here, right? So I really, this first bullet point is the most important one, and that is you really have to have a way with yourself, with your leadership staff, and with the underlying staff to constantly be asking, why are we doing this? What is the objective of which we're doing this? It's not to move a workload to the cloud. It's completely there's a mission alignment there, and what is it? So it might be that our first step is to move things to the cloud, but we want to be able to then get people to say, you know what, if we did this and this and this, or if we changed these systems or merge these two systems together, we'd be able to solve more of the mission with less cost and easier to maintain. So use these techniques. That's kind of a lean thing, but looking at it not from waste management, but from root objectives is a big takeaway. Then the rest is, the rest of this is all about, at the very end, it's like, I would have started sooner. There's so much to learn. Even if you go on, you have to figure out, how do we do our accounts? How do we pay for this? Even if you're only paying $100 a month, you'd be like, I still have to pay, right? I still have to get these, I still have to do that. And then you also have to say, I need a steady funding stream, because if my bill stops getting paid, it's very likely that these services will be turned off. And so there's a different risk model you have to work on there. So the sooner you can learn that and the sooner you can get all your ducks in a row to take care of those things, the better. You don't need a massive infrastructure out there to do those things.
Yeah, particularly in the federal marketplace where there's lots of players involved, so don't let perfect be the enemy of the good on getting started. You don't have to engineer to the nth degree. Get enough going so you can get started to learn and then evolve as you go.
For us, our work is supporting a research organization. We have really two main kind of paradigms. One paradigm is that everything they're doing is changing very rapidly. So it's not like we can hit goals, yesterday's goals. We have to kind of hit tomorrow's goals at some level. So we have to be prepared for that. Yep. But I think really the other thing is that our customer base is a scientifically trained staff. So as such, they don't live like we live. They don't think like we think. What can I implement? They live, I call it, in front of the knowledge curve. They're doing discovery. So as such, they have this ability, they've been trained and selected, they have this ability to pretend that they know a lot and create the future in their mind. And so sometimes that's confusing to us, because when we talk with them, they will, I have one of our guys who's worked with us for a long time. He's worked with a lot of scientists, and he would say, you have to bring them back to reality. And because they're so used to working with a lot of unknowns, and they're amazing at it, but we don't have to do that. We have all these knowns, right? And our stuff has to work. Their unknowns have to work on top of our knowns. And so those two things are really important. You have to really know your customers. What do they think? What do they value? How do they work? And then you also have to say, what is our mission? Is everything moving towards our mission?
So communicate, communicate, communicate.
Yeah, so a lot of that is there. And then you have to train them. Again, I introduced it saying it's a paradigm change. It's not just a paradigm change for computing, it's really a paradigm change for business. Right? Before we would say, what can IT do for us? How does it work? And instead, they're really going to be the ones driving, I need this capability, and I know it can be done, so please get that to me. And so I think it's such an exciting time because so much is available to us to change and improve, and it's really not that hard, right? It's a lot. Actually, we did talk a little earlier about one thing that is hard. And I would say where we're struggling with is where I don't see a great solution for is identity and access management. So, of course, we have our identities inside NIH, and we're all in that directory, and I can authenticate everyone. But as soon as I have someone at MD Anderson Cancer Center, at someone at Memorial Sloan Cancer Center, and I want to authenticate them, well, I have to go kind of to their system and do that. And then we have a certain way to vet staff, right? We will say, you have a certain level, that means you have access to this patient data, or no, you have access to this HR data. Well, how do I verify that they identity proof their staff to that level? And there really is no solution. There's no US ID, right? There's no worldwide ID. We work throughout the world too, and trying to authenticate and trying to authorize staff in a very dynamic environment that we'd like to, I still don't see a solution. So you're going to find these holes that you're going to have to put workarounds in place. So again, the sooner you get started, the sooner you can start creating some of these bridges over these gaps that exist.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Okay,
that.
my pleasure.
And I think that as we look at DoD, also offers some of the same challenges and opportunities. So, Rick, if you can share some of the things you're seeing out there and what's been your journey, and then we'll see where we go from there.
Well, thank you. So it kind of just dawned on me how, like, on the opposite end of the spectrums, the two speakers are. I'm Rick Jack. I'm a part of the Department of Defense. Specifically, I work for Space and Naval Warfare Center Pacific, who is the Science and Technology Research Laboratory for the Navy, and I'm the senior software engineer. So when we look at the two ends of the spectrum, I honestly kind of think we both are in the job of saving lives. We just do it differently. So for us, our job is to do and bring to bear capability that really helps our warfighters achieve mission and achieve mission effectively. And so, when we started down this journey of cloud, we're like, just like NIH was, we were a little hesitant at first, but there was a call to arms with respect to what the CNO wanted, right? The CNO was very interested in speeding up our ability to deliver capability. And the reason is because obsolescence, our adversaries, our near-peer adversaries, are bringing to bear capabilities that are just moving fast. So we have to move fast also. So along the way, our mission was, hey, let's see if we can speed this journey up. So Assistant Secretary of the Navy came to the center and said, hey, can you guys help with this cloud journey? Can you speed us up? There are cloud vendors out there. There are cloud access points. There are points for which the DoD can go consume cloud, but it wasn't meeting a mission marker. So we said, we took the challenge. We said, okay, let's go do this. But at the time, we were a little bit naive in the process. I could spell cloud. I could spell AWS, but only every third time because I am in the DoD. So it was it was a learning part. So I was giving kind of marching orders. 1, do it fast. Be fast. 2, be secure. Do not take unacceptable risk on behalf of the Navy. And 3, do it efficiently. And so for us, as a Science and Technology Research Laboratory, we looked across the way that the DoD was currently delivering cloud, and we said, look, that's not scratching our itch. We do a lot of science. We do a lot of research. In our dev environments, we have access. In our test environments, we need flexibility. So we thought, well, let's rethink the strategy in terms of how we acquire cloud and do it much like Amazon does, right? You go to the Amazon portal, it's very easy. You click something and go, let's get that, put my credit card in and start consuming cloud. I said, yes, that's specifically what we want. The question is, how do we do it? So the how was the thing we had to figure out, and that's where we started doing this thing about standard frameworks, an entry point and an exit point, and then create this idea that we could simplify the model so it doesn't put one, unnecessary risk on our Navy networks, and two, still allows for the rapid allocation of resources as needed, and then three, provides full transparency of cost, right? So boy, that was a challenge. So when we did this, we thought, let's first take a look at the roles and responsibilities. For example, if I go to the cloud today and I get my personal Rick Jack account and I log in and I put a router up there that has a route to China, that's a risk. But I accepted that risk. The question is, what's the impacts? Obviously, Amazon would go, hey, wait a second, what are you doing there? But when we talk about the Navy networks, we had to do it slightly differently. So what we did was we established what we call a brokerage model, which was first, find a way to deliver cloud in a secure manner. The way we did this was we took advantage of existing resources that we had in place. We didn't need to reinvent the wheel. And for those of you who think you have to start from scratch, that's a fallacy. You do not. You can deliver a cloud, but to do so securely, take a look across your organizations and see where you can adopt your current processes and your current security stacks to see if you can take advantage of. IDAM is a great example, right? Your LDAP solutions, your network monitoring solutions. So what we did is we took the best of breed across our security stacks and says, okay, let's go ahead and extend that within our IP range into the cloud. We did this with an experiment with AWS. We piloted it first to make sure, and once we did, we realized we could have true visibility in this. We could really monitor specifically what was going on. The second question was, well then, how does a consumer come in and consume cloud? So we had to set up what we call a billing structure. So first we established a partner. Our partner was General Dynamics. And we established a mechanism for a consumer to come in and they take on the risk of the financial responsibilities. In S&T and research and development and pre-production, I have some luxuries that maybe not exist all in part in production, right? So my risk is financial risk. I can't, as a single mission provider, as a single command, take on the complete financial risk of the entire DoD. That would be crazy. Somebody would go to jail. So number 4 rule was Rick doesn't go to jail. So what we did was we set up a financial structure that says, okay, go ahead. We're going to allow you to have the complete flexibility of the cloud, but mission owner, what we call a consumer, you take on the financial risk. So come date X, what we do is we shut your services down if you don't show up with money. Much like a credit card, right? It's a gift card model that basically you buy a set amount of resources on, and whether you want to buy the old Alanis Morissette CD you were longing to hear again, or you want to spin up an EC2 instance, or you're going to want to go hog wild with some analytics, running a giant analytics stack in the cloud, have at it. But I don't assume the risk. So once we set up all this cloud monitoring and status ideas, and then we actually implemented that, and then now we can watch as burn goes down, and that protected us. So we covered the security, we covered the ability to get cloud, and then we had to start implementing capabilities within the cloud that supported our mission. One of them was this idea of rapidly delivering capabilities, so we established a platform and what we call a SecDevOps pipeline. We've kind of experimented with that. General Dynamics was a huge help in helping us lift this off the ground, which helps with this idea of quickly expediting getting capability to the fleet. To say what we're trying to do is have true visibility in the software as it moves throughout the pipeline. So once we start with something, we tended to be a little bit lagging with respect to how much risk does it bring. We weren't finding defects until pre-production or staging, and it would cause us great delays. And those great delays would come in with respect to what we call this inheritance security problem we had, right? Which is you have to have an ATO. So when we established the SecDevOps pipeline, we were able to expose visibility in the software to elude to identify if we actually had security risk. We were able to show that bar to the community to know where that specific bar was. It's no secrets, right? We all know where we have to get to, and we could spin through and not waste valuable time by trying to get an accreditation post right before production. We could do it in the midst of development. So that SecDevOps pipeline helped tremendously. The other end of the spectrum is access. So we had because we had what let's call it a fence line, a DMZ, for example, to protect our Amazon resources, there had to be this idea of egress-ingress into the environment securely. Traditionally, the way we did that was challenging because of what we call the end node issue, right? Security of the end node device for which access is being given. We had to control that, and it was lagging and slow, or we had to give out devices. I'm sure NIH probably does something similar where you have a device that you give to your partners, and then they can get in and out of your network. We wanted to get rid of that because it's lagging. So General Dynamics helped us work out what we call the desktop as a solution, a secure desktop as a solution. There's a difference because Amazon does provide desktop as a service. It's amazing. We wanted that, but it doesn't necessarily scratch the security itch. Didn't do it the way the Department of Defense needed it to be done with respect to two-factor authentication and all of our other security rules. So they helped us implement that. And so we put all this on top of our Amazon environment, and we were able to deliver this fairly quickly.
So you have a lot of moving parts in that picture and a lot of interrelationships across. Do you have a sense for what was the timelines involved, so you can share just a little bit of when did you start, when did you get rolling, and then how did things evolve?
I wish I could give you a realistic answer to that. So we were given the task in, let's say, April of 17. We delivered cloud by October of 17. So that is monumentally fast in DoD speak, for example. That means establishment of the security, establishment of the contract, establishment of the authorization, did it all within that time. But the reason is because of this appetite. We had a very big appetite to do it. We're still obviously adopting some of the newer constructs. We took a little bit of risk up front to do it fast, but we were able to do so in October, and we had our first customers in, I think, in roughly November. So this is a part of the lessons learned. It wasn't a mass flood. Once we got access to the cloud, it wasn't like we kicked the doors open and it was Black Sunday, right? Or Black Friday. Black Friday and all the customers rushing. We were very cognizant of, all right, let's take some big customers and allow them to come through. The other part was we realized that once we let the contract, we didn't have this, right? Which was an entry point. Okay, so how do I know what a customer wants? Just like you were alluding to, I don't want to get into the idea of making the system for them, doing all the work, but I have to organize it in such a way that I know who they are, I know where to put them, I know how to build them, I know what to do with them if there's an issue, right? I can kick you out of the party if you do something bad. Because I will monitor that activity. And it's kind of like what we do is we preset these service level agreements for all of our mission consumers. So we set up this portal that helped what we call onboarding into the cloud. And this is a lesson to us too, is like I would have known this right away, I'd have written it right into the contract up front, but we didn't, so we kind of had to do a little bit of a after action goes, hey, how do we get consumers to do it the way we want to do it? So this is what we did. And along the way, we struggled with the specific process for the things we needed to control. So we prototyped a couple, and we learned that we were missing a couple things, like for example, like how many users come in, or how do we do what we call distributed access? If we have one consumer come in and then he shares his account because he's got 30 developers all working behind him, we didn't want that to happen. But we do have to want them to grant permission. The other part of this is understanding how much they can do, what's authorized and what's not authorized, and then putting them within the right security boundary. But obviously, if you have a lot of risk, we're going to put you in a different place than if you don't have a lot of risk. For example, you're doing a lot of experimentation and prototype, you're going to be in something that we're going to control a little bit more.
Yeah, and here's a great example of that. Learn a little, get a little out there, and then take and evolve where you're going. So it's refreshing to hear that even in DoD, that there's opportunities where we can try and drive and put stuff forward, even if the all the requirements are not known, and it's not all laid out. It almost feels a little agile in nature that we can get to that point of moving this ball forward, because it's the delivery of services is really the key aspect of this.
Yep. So some lessons learned. So what we had to do was, we took some of the more complex programs and did them first. And the reason is because the low-hanging fruit, it tended to be easy. They're much more akin to the way a commercial service would be provided. It was the more complex programs that we wanted to work through first. We do have what we call the secure IL45. I'm not sure if much of the crowd's familiar with impact levels. What that means, it's a very high level of data, how we treat data in the DoD. IL5 is what we call the highest level of unclassified data that you can put in the cloud. We wanted to make sure that when we brought a program in, we could control that level of data. And then we had to work with respect to the onboarding, that portal that we set up. We work with what we call ITSM tools to figure out how to provision services, to allocate domains, allocate IPs, and to do cost and billing, and CSRA/GIT were instrumental in helping us figure all that out. So the other part of the lessons learned, the best practices was focusing on the transparency of cost. There's a cost of doing business that has to be captured also, but for a consumer, the consumer really wants to know, hey, like, you know, if I'm not going to take on the risk, they need to be elevated in terms of how much things cost at any particular time. So what we did is we worked with some of the mission partners to institute APIs that exposed actual cost as services were being consumed, so they could monitor along the way. And that was somewhat new to providers, because typically they get a monthly bill, and it's almost lagging in terms of cost. So that was a challenge. The other part was the ubiquitous access. I talked about that before with this desktop as a service. That was amazing. I mean, as a matter of fact, it still amazes me every time I think about it, how fast we were able to kick that off, and the capability that was brought to bear. And I think that shows when you really start taking the power of the cloud to bear, how fast things can start happening. And the other is fail fast, right? So in S&T, that's our mantra, right? Fail fast, so that we fail on behalf of others. So this idea of keeping it simple is where we try to go to. Although we are failing fast, we want to learn from our mistakes and not duplicate them. And then we're going to apply those things to our Cloud Brokerage to help the consumer do what's best for the DoD.
So a couple of things, when I was walking around preparing for today, I tried to get a sense for what's still on people's minds. And following the Mythbusters model, I collected 3 together, so I thought we'd walk through that. And from the Mythbusters side, what they'll tend to do is we'll look at the evidence that we find, and then we're either going to say it's true, that the myth is there, or we're going to bust it. So we're going to see how this plays out. So cloud technologies automatically improve availability. Is that a myth? What do you guys think on that? What are you seeing in your own examples of developing applications, and what do you have to consider to build highly available applications in the cloud?
That's a myth.
I mean, I guess it depends on how bad your on-prem infrastructure is. So it could be better, but right, you have a lot of things to take into account.
Right. So I think that's pretty clear. That's busted. Okay. So no silver bullets in here. Still have to do good design, and we can always read the trade rags to see all the instances when people don't do this right up front. I think we've touched on this one, but just to circle it back, the cloud isn't secure or is too risky to move workloads to.
I mean, you could answer, but right, everything has risk. You just manage to the risk, right?
That's correct. You know, I would say that's the cloud has risk, but it's not risk you're not willing to accept. Matter of fact, you're able to move faster by aggregating or adopting things that are already secure for you. So Amazon's a great example. Once they get certified, and they maintain that certification for agencies like ourselves. So that's something you can easily overcome.
And I do think we're seeing other products emerge on the marketplace. So infrastructure as a service was one level of view, but when you're trying to go across software as a service offerings, these CASBs are out that are starting to play a role in this kind of equation, so you can get an idea of the workloads, what's going on out there, and make sure you have a rich ecosystem to cover down on these kinds of issues as you go over. There's an opportunity, there's a great set of folks on the floor. I think John Grimm, our alliance manager from GDIT, is actually at our booth 354 if anybody's curious to talk about these things. But avail yourselves of this in this venue today. This is an open forum. Talk to, pressure, push these kind of thoughts forward as you're trying to think through these security issues, because you don't want to wait for these to the end.
So, so I can't take credit for this. I was at a conference, and the deputy CIO of Oak Ridge National Laboratory, he said, and I think this is perfect for the Mythbusters, he said, you know, just the economics model is what drives cloud to be more secure. If a cloud vendor is not secure, if they have breaches, they will not get business, they will close. If a government agency is not secure and has breaches, it will get more funding. So there's a pressure to be more secure by the cloud vendor, and there's not so much pressure. We're not secure because I told you we needed 5 more security people. I told you we needed more architects. That's why we're not secure. And that so far has been the response, instead of saying, no, you're closed. Right?
So the last one I picked up, that cloud is an IT initiative only.
Oh, no. Oh, no, that's false. So cloud's an enabler, right? It covers so much of the spectrum, especially when we talk about AI and those kinds of things. You know, you think about it where it really affects, you know, business is business in terms of context, right? So it's a business enabler. So it's more than just IT. It actually can change behaviors. You can start to you know, expand aperture. It can drive the way you fundamentally do your services. So I would think it's more than that.
I think so too, because I think a really easy way to convey that message is that just think of your phone, how cloud-enabled that device is, right? Mm-hmm. It wouldn't work without this giant, you know, network. It wouldn't really be anything like it is if it weren't for the cloud. Yet it's completely abstracted away from the user. They have no idea that that thing their game they're playing or that message they're sending, none of that would work without the cloud. And so that's exactly what we want to go to in their everyday life. It's like, oh yeah, no, this is on the cloud. It's like, oh yeah, that's all on the cloud. That's why it works so well. That's why you can get to it from anywhere.
So one of the things I'd like to leave everybody with here, we've got just a couple of minutes left. We've heard about this great journey you guys have undertaken and the value that you've derived from it. I suspect this is not the end of the journey. It's just a progression that we're going to keep going. So if you had to give a sense for what's next, kind of what are you going to focus on, what do you think are going to be the next things you're going to look at, and if you had any parting suggestions to the audience about what things they may want to focus on or know about given this venue, just share about 1 minute each, please, and then we'll wrap it up.
For easy for me, automation, right? Taking advantage of compliance automation of services, automate is gonna do it, and then on top of that, machine learning and AI is where we're going. So
I'm glad you said it was easy, because I was thinking, oh, it's so complicated. Like, I'm just thinking there's so many moving pieces still for success, right? Like, those things are 100% from the IT side. That's totally true. We need to automate. But where I look at what stalls us, it's just our people. They just kind of don't get it. They don't have that perfect use case all the time to convey, this is why we want to do that. And then also our director, we have a presidential appointed director, so every time we get a new director, there's a learning curve for them. And so our current director, he just recently presented his 4 main things. And for us, it was great, because one of his main things was something that I've talked to him a lot about, and that's our human capital. How do we get our human capital trained to be, so they can maximize their utilization of this? And I go to conferences too, and they'll sometimes say, oh, I know people are beating your door down to do this. I'm like, they're not beating my door down. I'm beating their door down. Like, we gotta do this. So I want them to be beating my door down. And I think we're still looking for those great use cases to do that.
And there's probably opportunities to leverage some capabilities even out of the DoD side, even though we're part of the federal civilian group here. is this 8570 construct, which allows you to take and put together not only just capabilities around skills on a computing environment, but make sure you're complementing that with security and awareness that you need to build these systems in a secure way. So always make sure that's part of the equation, make sure that you're driving through these conversations. And just like we've seen, this is about transparency and moving to the cloud, unlike sometimes even in our own data centers or our own operations, that once you move to the cloud, you get a lot more transparency of cost, transparency of utilization, transparency of what's happening in that environment. And there's power to leverage there. So I thank you for being a great audience here today. A lot of great stuff going on. We'll stay back if you have questions for us individually, but thank you very much.